Going to call to order today's Colerain Township Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for June 26, 2019. First, we can go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, for those who are not familiar with the board's process, we like to provide a brief overview of the agenda for the evening. First, the primary functions of the Board of Zoning Appeals, or BZA, are quasi-judicial, and we are authorized to hear appeals from the administrative interpretation of the zoning code, such as the administrative denial of a zoning permit, requests for zoning variances, requests for conditional uses, and requests for expansion or changes to non-conforming uses or buildings. The typical agenda for these meetings go as follows. Appeals will be heard first, then other business of the board will be conducted. You may stay at the conclusion of the appeals, but you are not required to. All those who will testify in an appeal will be sworn in as a group or individually at the discretion of the chairperson. Anyone who wishes to testify after being sworn in must speak from the podium here and into the microphone, as these proceedings are being recorded. And if you don't speak into the microphone, of course, your testimony may not be accepted. Be sure to give your name and your address for the record, and all testimony is subject to cross-examination. All documents, photographs, and other physical evidence presented during an appeal will be accepted by the board unless withdrawn by the offerer or an objection is made as to the admissibility of the evidence offered. The chairperson will rule as to whether evidence submitted will be accepted or rejected. The zoning administrator or staff members will present an overview of each case. They will then make a recommendation as to the board as to the disposition of the case. The chairperson will then open the hearing to the appellant to present his or her case. At the conclusion of the appellate's presentation, the floor will be open to the public for those who wish to speak for or against the appeal. After comments for or against the appeal are made, the chairperson will close public, or a motion will be made to close the public comment section, or portion of the evening. Each board member will then address questions to the appellant, staff, and as appropriate to those opposed. Once questions have been answered to the satisfaction of the board, the chairperson will ask for a motion to approve or deny the request. There may be discussion on the motion, and then a vote of the members will be taken. Please remember that the vote of the board is the final action of the Board of Zoning Appeals. During these proceedings, we ask that everyone be respectful. The chairperson does have the right to excuse anyone who's being disruptive from the hearing. With that said, can we have a roll call?
Mr. Bartelt?
Here.
Mr. Hill? Mr. Roberto?
Present.
Mr. Reinger?
Here.
Ms. Wilson?
Present. Mr. Hill is not here this evening, so we ask that Mr. Shoup come and be seated. Okay. Will all appellants and anyone who will be speaking for or against the, we have one appeal this evening, and so for those who will be speaking, presenting or speaking for or against, please rise and be sworn in. And raise your right hand. Do you swear that swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth before the Board of Zoning Appeals? Please say I do.
I do.
Thank you. This evening we have appeal BZA 2019-003. Request for variances for an accessory structure. The location 8144 Sheed Road. The applicant or owner is Thomas Metz. Does the staff have a presentation for this evening?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. The applicant applied for a zoning permit on May 6th for an accessory structure located in the rear yard for a storage garage. It was denied a week later due to the proposal exceeding the size and height allowances. So he is requesting variances from section 10.2.1A8 and section 10.2B for the storage garage. So here is an aerial of the property. It's located off of Sheed Road, off of Private Drive. You can see here, right there on the left-hand side. The property is approximately 5 acres, and then you can see Livingston Road on the right. Here's another aerial view of the property, a little bit better than the Hamilton County aerials, I believe. The property itself is zoned R5, single family, as well with all the adjacent property owners being R5 as well. Here is a picture of the primary residence, which I got off the Hamilton County Auditor's website from a few years ago. According to the auditor's website, the first floor of the house, including the garage, is approximately 2,900 square feet. So the 2,900 square feet is the maximum allowance that this property could have in accessory structures. Here is kind of a rough estimate of where the proposed structure is going to be. Oops, let me move that out of the way. The structure is going to be 150 by 36, approximately 5,400 square feet storage garage. So with that, with the 5,400 square feet being subtracted by the allowance of 2,900 square feet for the footprint of the house, this exceeds the allowance by 2,666 square feet, which is technically about double what is actually allowed. And there's actually an existing storage shed right in the southern property line right there. The applicant is also proposing a driveway to connect to the garage, which you can see these little yellow lines right there. It's going to be paved in approximately 110 feet. This is the only plan that was submitted by the applicant when he submitted for the BZA. You can see the building's very large. The approximate height of this structure is 22.5 feet. So according to the zoning resolution, the tallest an accessory structure can be is 15 feet from the middle of the roof line. So that is the middle of the top of the wall height to the top of the roof. So for this structure, the middle of that would be approximately 19 feet 4 inches. So that would be 4 feet 4 inches more than what is allowed. The applicant was advised that he could make this an addition to his house. So given that that would meet the setback requirements for an R5 property, it would have been technically approved if it was counted as an addition. So with that, staff finds that the height variance requested is substantial since the building exceeds the maximum height by nearly 30%. The size variance requested is also substantial since the proposed building exceeds maximum size allowed by 97%, almost 100%. The granting of the variances would grant a consideration that is not available to other property owners within the neighborhood. The property in question would likely yield a reasonable return without a variance. The property can reasonably be used as a single-family dwelling within the limits of the zoning regulations. The granting of variance would probably not have a negative impact on the neighboring properties, but would create a precedent to allow for taller accessory structures if requested by the neighbors. Approval of the size and height variances would not affect the delivery of governmental services. There are no unusual topographic or site configuration issues related to this property, which would prevent the reasonable application of the size and height regulations. And lastly, by taking into consideration the benefit to the applicant, if the variances are granted as weighed against the potential detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood and broader community, staff finds that substantial justice would be done by not granting the variances for additional size or height allowances for the proposed storage garage. With all that being said, staff recommendation is denial of the variance request. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. I see that Mr. Metz has signed in. If he's present, if you would take the podium and make your presentation.
Okay. So I don't have a problem attaching it to my house. If it's denied, we can just go that route, and I'll just attach it to the house. What I was trying to do is there's a real big tree, real nice. So I was just I didn't want to chop that down. So if I attach it to the house, I have to chop down that tree. But I guess, so be it. But yeah, that's really it. It's just to store cars, there. But other than that, I'll go with whatever the decision is, and if not, we'll just attach it to the house.
Okay, thank you. Be sure to feel free to have a seat, and if we have any questions for you, we'll ask for you to come back up. Do we have anyone who is speaking in favor of the appeal? Sir, if you would take the podium, please state your name and your address.
Philip Kennedy, 7971 Livingston Road. Mr. Metz's property backs up to my property. There's a heavily wooded buffer between our two properties. This addition or this building would not affect our property whatsoever. We wouldn't hardly see it except in the wintertime, maybe a little bit. So he asked me about it before he did the planning. I said I had no problem with it, but I do not live on the private drive. I am off of Livingston Road, which is in the back of him. So that's it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else speaking in favor of the appeal? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition of the appeal? Please take the podium. Please state your name, your address for the record.
I am Thomas J. Hart. I'm a CPA, retired, and we own 7909 Livingston Road, 45247. We own the adjacent property on Tomage Farms estate that has 6 5-acre lots due south of the petitioner's property. For the past few months, we have seen and heard a lot of different cars on the petitioner's property. There are so many cars that he parks them in the grass, and as trees have produced leaves, our vision has decreased, but the sound of the cars has continued. I do not believe that the petitioner has a lot of common sense. After he moved into the house, he started to cut down trees on his property that are adjacent to our property. The trees were fairly tall and dangerous if they fell on humans or animals. One of the trees that I can even see today that is resting on the ground, hung in adjacent trees, that is about 50 feet tall and hanging over our property line. I have a picture on my cell phone if somebody wants to see it or forward it to him. I did verify today the tree was totally cut off in the base and resting perpendicular to the ground in an upright position, high among the branches of other trees, keeping it upright at the moment. We also have deed restrictions on our property, like the group of 5 acres in which he is part of the deed restrictions. There is no place for a large building to hold cars. I think that he may want to use it as a service bay for working on cars and then putting them up for sale. Therefore, I think the zoning board's decision was correct, and the ruling should stand as ruled by that board. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition?
Yeah, my name is Harold Trumper, 8146 Sheed Road. I had in my hands here the records or for each one of our 5-acre tracts. And in here are the rejections or can I come up and,
Yes,
and give you
please.
a copy of this? I'm not too good at speaking.
Thanks. Is there one for everybody?
They're deeds.
Thank you. You have a copy. How many copies do you have? How many copies do you have?
5.
Okay.
Yeah, I got plenty of them. Paragraph 1, 2, and 12 is very important.
Thank you.
I'll take the 5th copy. Thank you. Or do you need this? Do you need this?
No, I don't need
Okay.
it, I got plenty back there.
Okay, thank you.
I have something else I want to give you too.
Sure.
It has to do
Oh,
with
well,
the
if
Speak at the
you're going
podium,
to
sir.
speak, make sure you speak at the podium.
Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you.
This has to do with, sorry. This has to do with the road and the blacktop. When I purchased that in 1972, I picked this lot because of two things. Mainly, the restrictions on the property to stop anybody coming in here throwing up a big building such as this right here and messing up the, in other words, my property values is what it does. I spent 47 years planting trees, all kind. I have a tree farm, and it's beautiful. It turned out great, and I would like to stay there and enjoy it without looking at this building that he wants to put up. Another thing about the road, bring it up. The road was construction grade by Tebby Land Corporation when we started to build the homes. And what it was, they had 3 inches of B19 on the road, and that was it. The trucks got stuck on the road. You couldn't get to your house. It was a muddle. Okay, and Teddy was smart, because if he'd have put a good road in there, it would have been tore up with 9-yard trucks coming up there all the time. So he was smart, and then whenever the houses were finished, they come in and put a tar chip road in. And that is, I mean, you put a 9-yard truck on that, it's gonna sing right on through it too. So I don't know if anybody knows up there anything about roads and how they're built to withstand heavy loads. According to what I'm looking at, he's gonna have at least 100 yards of concrete coming in there over a bridge that's 47 years old. And the road has no base under it at all. It's gonna come apart. It's gonna be a mess again. Can I give you these?
Yes, please. And for the record, Mr. Trapper has handed the board a copy of a general warranty deed dated
May 27th.
May 25th, May 25th, 1972.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's time stamped or stamped by the county, May 25th, 1972. And then he is now handing us,
This here has to do with roads.
okay, and he's also handing us copies.
Blacktop on a road is nothing but decoration. What's below that?
Well, hold on a second. You can hand us the copies and then make sure you speak at the podium.
Oh, okay,
So we can
right.
record your testimony. Does everybody
We'll
have a
distribute them
copy?
for you. Did you bring 5 copies, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yours.
No, I've got 20 copies here.
Okay.
We've got.
Yeah, you can go ahead and hand us whatever copies you have right now. Is that everything?
Okay.
Okay. For the record, let the record show that we have a copy of a article dated June 7, 2002, printed on June 26, 2019, entitled "For Blacktop, It Pays to Lay Gravel on Thick" by Tim Carter with the Chicago Tribune. Does everybody have a copy? You may proceed, Mr. Trapper.
Okay. The road that we have right now has no base underneath of it. He's gonna be coming in there with 6-yard, 9-yard trucks. 1 yard of concrete is 4,000 pounds. With 6 yards is 6/4 at 24,000 pounds plus the truck. The bridge is old. It's 47 years old. We already have a problem with it in the front, and the apron coming up onto the bridge. Somebody had a heavy truck back there within a week or two, and it caved in that part right there. So that's going to be the start of it. And you continuously run trucks over that, it's going to continuously sink farther and farther. And nobody's going to be able to get in there then, unless you get a pickup truck, you will, okay. That's what I'm fearful of. That's just the part of it. The tonnage that he's going to have to get to do what he wants to do, that road is not going to take it. Just not. It won't stand it. And that's what I have to say. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else present who is speaking in opposition of this appeal? Yes, sir. Please approach the podium. Please give your name and address for the record.
My name's Jim Spaeth, and I live at 8150 Sheed Road. I share Harold's concerns, and my concerns are for the safety and well-being of the neighborhood. The road and the bridge won't take it. That bridge goes down, and all of us back in our neighborhood, we're out of luck. I mean, it's getting emergency vehicles in there. There are older people in the neighborhood, getting ambulances in, or fire engines in, or the police in. With that bridge down, you know, we'd have to have a temporary bridge, but there's going to be a period of time where we're all going to be exposed to some danger. With that many concrete trucks coming in, that much construction equipment going on, or construction going on, I fear for the safety of the neighborhood. I agree that that road and that bridge, I've been there 45 years, and I agree that that bridge it's not going to take it, and the road's not going to take it. The structure itself, that is not in tune with what our neighborhood is or has back there. In the deed restrictions that Harold passed out to you, you'll notice that it mentions a 2-car garage as being an outbuilding, and with no less than a 2-car garage because of the fact didn't want a bunch of one sheds and all over the neighborhood. We also have an elderly person in a neighborhood who is blind, who walks that road on a regular basis with her guide dog, Ms. Stromeyer, and Jane Stromeyer. And Jane is an owner of the property down in front, and one in the front. There's 6 houses in the front of the property. Jane walks all the time. All the neighbors know Jane walks all the time, but none of the contractors know that. And Jane was nearly hit recently by a contractor coming back there, and you know, the dog pushed her aside and almost toppled her. And Jane is elderly, and we have kids. My grandkids come and play on that road. I don't need construction trucks flying back and forth, causing potential problems. We have a nice neighborhood. We've been back there a long time, and it's our piece of heaven. And we get to our older years. I'm no young man. We want to enjoy it, and we want to look at a pole barn or a structure like that that could be converted into an auto shop or whatever else. And that's about all I have to say.
Thank you.
But security is a big problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition?
Good evening. I'm Marcy Linder. I live at 8142 Sheed Road. We are neighbors to Tom, and direct neighbors to Tom. And first, you know, I just want to say that I really hope that this does not disrupt our nice neighborhood culture. A lot of us moved to this site for a lot of different reasons, but a lot of us, we keep to ourselves, we mind our own business, and we enjoy life. And unfortunately, this may cause a rift, and that worries me. I understand that, you know, Tom, as long as he builds a breezeway to this large structure, that you guys don't have anything to say about that, and that can pass. So I do understand that, but you know, I feel that you know, we purchased this location with the deed that Harold provided to you. I would ask for you to review that. But we purchased for a reason, that we were moving to the township, and a wonderful township, and that the deed was in place, so that we were protected and that the neighborhood was protected. Tom, I really ask that you hear what your neighbors are saying here. We understand that you can do the breezeway, we understand that, but I really would encourage that you hear our concerns. Our expectation, which it sounds like is in play, is that, the township has guidelines and they are put in place for a reason. Just as variances are put into play if there are good reasons for them. In general, it would be pertinent for you to understand, and per the deed of our property and everyone who lives back there, that we are responsible for the bridge, we are responsible for the private drive, which is our only access to our homes. We are also responsible to maintain the drainage that happens within all of our properties. And it starts at the back, which is where Tom and Harold's property is, and works its way down to the front, to Sheed Road, to the creek that is right there. We are responsible to maintain that as well, which is in our deed, which comes at a cost to maintain those items. So the three main concerns: the drainage, the private drive and bridge, and then the precedents that it sets. So as far as the drainage goes, like I said, currently, the drainage that is set in place, it's existing, and when it rains a lot, because we are the lot that is right next to Tom's, so if I can go up here, please. This is Tom's private drive right here to his house. This is the private drive that shoots down to Sheed Road. This is our house right here, and this is the retention pond. So the drainage starts up here and works its way down all the way to Sheed Road.
Just for the record, can you restate what you just said right there so we can make sure it was recorded for the record? Yes, what you just explained right there.
So the drainage starts at the back of the lots, which is Harold and Tom's lots, and works its way down. The retention pond, which is on our property, is part of that drainage system, and it works its way down all the way to Sheed Road, to the creek that runs parallel to Sheed Road at the end of the drive. When it rains heavy, our pond at times does overflow. It goes over our driveway, and then also the drainage works its way down and sometimes goes over top. When it rains a lot, it goes over top of the private drive, which may cause some issues.
Okay, thank you.
If the ground is wet under the drive or around the drive, if you have heavy concrete trucks coming up that driveway, you can imagine the damage that it may cause. But like I said, all of the neighbors under our deed are responsible for paying for the maintenance and fixing anything that might happen. We understand that to maintain our homes and our properties, there are times that large trucks or heavy trucks do have to come back to the site, but the excessive amount of trucks at a particular time to build this structure way exceeds, as you've heard from Harold and some of the others, way exceeds the way that the drive is able to handle those vehicles. And then the last item, which is the precedence, our concern is, that you would be setting a precedence for the township and for our private drive specifically, which was not designed to accommodate such a large structure. We don't mind that a structure is being built. It's the size that we have the concern with, and our existing conditions of drainage, our drive, the private drive, and the bridge. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present who's speaking in opposition? Okay, seeing none. Is there a motion to close the public speaking portion?
I'll make the motion.
So
second.
moved. Motion's been made and seconded. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Bartolt?
Yes.
Mr. Shup?
Yes.
Mr. Roberto?
Yes.
Mr. Reinger?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye. We will start with Mr. Shoup. Do you have any questions? I'm sorry. Shup, I'm sorry. Mr. Shup, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I do, Mr. Metz. Had you figured anything in terms of the bridge?
Can you go up to the podium?
Mr. Metz, could you please approach the podium?
So, we bring trucks back there. People have to get their septic tanks, empty. I know Harold brings big trucks back there. And I think some of the neighbors just had some concrete work done, so they had trucks up there. So it can handle the trucks. So, but I was going to be considering and actually doing an extra expense and going with the single axle trucks, so that I'd stay within the 8-ton limit, so that I don't do any damage to the bridge. I mean, my goal is not to do any damage at all. So, but there's ways around it. Bringing equipment back there, park on the main road, and just drive the equipment back. That way, the trucks don't have to go on that main road. So, I mean, that was my plan all along. It's going to cost me a little bit more expense, to do so. But there's ways around making sure that you do things, properly, and within the confines of what we're working with.
Mm-hmm.
So, bringing big trucks back there, it's not my intent. So, yeah.
The other question I had is this other outbuilding you have, if you do erect this building or some version of this building, will you still need the other shed?
That's a little, that's only 160, which is like 160 square feet. That's just something you buy at home or something like that. So, yeah.
So would you still keep it?
I didn't have any plans on moving it anywhere, just where it's at. So I was
Just
like,
curious.
Yeah.
Just curious, okay. I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Shoup. Mr. Bartolt?
So how long have you lived at the residence?
I've owned it since 2006.
Okay. And I'm assuming you're familiar then with the deed restrictions that we were presented with?
Yeah, I have a copy of those. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just curious. I'm not in any way a legal person, but it does mention what you can and can't do. And I know if you put the breezeway on, it no longer becomes a garage. I don't know if it's still legal or per zoning, if it's still considered a garage or not, but I mean, that's for you and your neighbors
You're
too.
right. That's a detached garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can just build it on. I'll build it on the side of the house where Harold's house is, just along that side, just attach it to my house,
Yeah.
and then, go back.
I was just curious because, again, I would assume this is governing all the property owners in that area.
Yeah, and I totally forgot about that.
So,
Yeah.
So the actual, the outbuilding, which is large, I guess we can see that, but currently, I mean, if it were built from day one, would it be full, or would it be 20% full, or?
I have 14 cars.
Okay.
I collect cars, so yeah, it'll be full. I'm not a mechanic. It's pretty ridiculous, whatever that guy said. Mr. Hart, over on that side, crazy. But no, I'm not a mechanic. That's not my intent.
So it won't be a business?
No.
Okay. But it's that high because of an RV or some sort of other vehicle?
Eventually, yeah. If I want to put an RV in there, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking when it comes to the bridge, I guess anyone in that area is allowed to have a house addition, I'm assuming. And that would mean concrete trucks and wood trusses and other things being delivered. So it's no different than that, I'm assuming.
And I don't know if anything in the deed is talked about that, but is the bridge concrete?
It's concrete. I think it has 2 steel trusses underneath.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause, I had the concrete company come out. They looked at it. They checked the bridge. You know, they made sure it was structurally sound. They just did that a couple of days ago. And they said, yeah, they have the steel trusses underneath.
Okay. That's all for me.
Thank you, Mr. Bartold. Mr. Reiner, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. And my first question, just for clarification, is to the staff. Mr. Metz, please stay put. The general warranty deed, how is that compatible with the current zoning? The deed is 1972, and the current zoning laws are much more current. So which takes precedent?
The zoning always takes precedent over a deed restriction.
Okay.
The township is not a party to deed restrictions. It's only amongst people within that subdivision. So we have no enforcement abilities or even interest in it.
Thank you for that clarification. I think I heard you say, Mr. Metz, that you have currently 14 cars. Where are they stored now?
I have 4 in my garage, a couple over my mom's house, a couple at my brother-in-law's house, and then the ones I drive are in my driveway.
Okay. A 2,900 square foot building, what you're asking for is 5,400. Using the standard parking space allowances we use in our zoning code, will fit 14 cars in right now. What you're asking for is something that would hold between 26 and 31 cars. It's just kind of a rough calculation. I'm somewhat concerned about the connection of the building to the house as being a way of bypassing the accessory building component. I believe it's more than a breezeway. I think it is a closed structure to get from a house.
I wouldn't do a breezeway. It would actually, I'd build it onto the house. It would become part of the house.
For the record, Mr. Reiniger, it has to be a fully enclosed breezeway.
Fully enclosed. Okay. The only other comment I would share with you and whoever is here and listening is I'm not real strong proponent of folks that create a problem and wish the township to ameliorate their concerns. This is something, a hobby you enjoy, and that's to be saluted, but you're asking for a variance that is so significant that you've created a problem that you want us to solve, basically. And that is outside of my comfort zone.
Sure, no, I totally understand that. Yeah.
Other than that, I don't have any questions, Madam Chairman. I may come back with some questions for everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Roberto?
Well, I am familiar with warranties and deeds and such because I am in real estate, and this right here is going to bar you from doing what you want to do, even if you attach it to your building, because it's clearly stated that you can't build another structure or outbuilding in item number 2. So if you've received this and you agreed to it, when you purchased the property, and I'm assuming you did, you're kind of dead in the water. They're going to end up taking you to court. That's what's going to end up happening. We won't be able. We could say yeah, but they're going to take you to court, and I suspect you'll lose based upon this warranty deed. I personally don't feel comfortable with building a structure this size, more than double your house. If it was a farm and you were doing, horse farm and things like that, then it was, I could see it and I can justify it, but it's a residence. And and I agree that there's going to be some, even with you taking down the 8-ton limit, you're going to do damage to the road, just all that concrete going back there. So if you did do the damage, are you willing to then fix the entire road?
Well, then I think if the road's not a stable road, think we should do something about it to begin with, because it sounds like they're saying that the road's dangerous to even bring. So how are people going to empty out their septic tanks if we can't bring large trucks back there?
Well, is a septic tank gonna be 8 tons?
The septic tank truck,
Yeah.
they're 28 tons for a septic tank truck.
I mean, I don't, it's been years since I've done septic, so I wouldn't know, but, and that's a valid point, you know, but then again, that's once however many, oftentimes not repetitive over a short period of time, because you're talking multiple loads going in to do this concrete over one period of time versus, so it's a good argument, but you can also see their side.
That means that nobody can do an addition or anything to their house, right? I mean, if you go by that.
Well, if you go by your deed restriction, that's what you got to go back to, because you've agreed to when you bought that parcel, that property.
What you're saying about doing damage to the road, that means nobody can do anything, any additions, anything.
Well, it says in here, if you do damage it, you're responsible to fix it in your restriction. So it then goes back to if you bring all these vehicles across your land, they're going to, again, sue you to make sure you fix it. So and we'll go back to, we're looking at it from a zoning perspective. It's enormous, absolutely enormous. It would set a precedence that we've rejected many other ones that were smaller than this, and from height as well as, you know, overall size. And I can tell you right now, my vote will be no against it. And, you know, you then go and attach it to the building, it's just, and then it goes back to your deed restriction. So it's, either way, somebody's going to say no to it. I have nothing else to say.
Thank you, Mr. Bartol. I'm sorry, Roberto. Is there anyone else who has any other questions before I? Okay. Mr. Metz, I'm just going to echo Mr. Reininger and Mr. Roberto's sentiments. To piggyback on Mr. Reininger's sentiments, if you attach it to your house, well, first let me ask this. Are you going to maintain the same height size if you were going to attach it to your home?
No, I wouldn't do 5,400, no.
Okay.
I would probably go down to maybe 3,000 square feet, probably.
Okay. I mean, I would encourage you, if you were to do that, to maybe make it make sense as far as the number of cars that you have. But as an officer of the court, meaning as an attorney, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to agree with Mr. Roberto, you're going to have a serious problem with this general warranty deed because this is a private neighborhood. And so this will govern, am I permitted to read this?
Yeah.
Okay.
They all
So
have.
I'd like to just read from paragraph 9 specifically because as in regard to the issue of the road, first I would encourage you to work with your neighbors to determine how are you all collectively going to deal with any current damages or, you know, anything that's wrong with the road that's unstable, especially in addition to the bridge. You all need to work with your neighbors on that, and especially if you're going to be bringing a bunch of trucks and things of that nature, you might want to offer taking on a significant portion of that if it's going to cause any further damage to the road or the bridge. But let me read this. In the general warranty deed, again, it's received for record May 26, 1972 at 1:20 p.m. Paragraph 9 states, no one shall bring to any of the lots such heavy machinery as dump trucks, school buses, boats, campers, trailers, pickup trucks, or any other such heavy equipment unless a proper parking area is provided in the rear of the house with the proper plantings and or fencing to obscure the foregoing from being seen from the main access road. And so, you know, initially when I was reading this, I thought that this was kind of giving you an out and maybe providing that you could figure out where to park these things. And I think you kind of mentioned that before, park these things without causing any further damage to an already damaged road or bridge. But you would end up having to park these things on your yard and things of that nature. You've already heard your neighbors testify that there's an issue with the cars that are already parked there, the issue of the trees that are being cut down. And I know that trees are not an issue here, but paragraph 5 states no trees shall be cut, removed, destroyed intentionally for at least 1 year. So I hope you've done that. But I would be concerned not just with having to get approval from this board or the township, I'd be concerned with any legal ramifications that will result as a result of you trying to build this structure. And so I would encourage you to try to figure out an alternative. You've already stated that you're willing to attach something to your home, but I would try to figure out what can be attached to your home that's a little more reasonable, that will not disturb, or, first of all, violate this general warranty deed, but also.
I'll make sure,
Yeah.
I'll make sure I do that. And I'll make sure that we all do it.
Yes.
You know, stuff
I mean,
take a look at.
as a neighbor, it's great to get along with your neighbors, and so I'm just gonna tell you now, once the vote is taken, of course, I can't go against what our regulations states. Townships, zoning rules state that an accessory structure of this size is not permissible, and as Mr. Roberto stated to you, we have in the past few years denied structures smaller than this, so
Makes sense. No, I agree.
that's all I've got. Okay, if you have anything else to state? Okay.
No, I appreciate the time.
No problem, Mayor.
Can I make a
Proceed.
real quick comment?
Yes.
The decision before you tonight is an issue of height and size of an accessory structure. While we kind of understand some of the things, that there are covenants in place, there's a driveway condition, there's a bridge condition, and so forth, those aren't really zoning issues that come into play. Height and size are restricted for accessory structures because we do not allow businesses to go in residential neighborhoods. And I think a concern is these buildings outlast their owners, and in future generations, as people are buying and selling properties and we have large buildings, that they become commercial in flavor when we have a residential zoning district. So I just want to kind of rein it in, height, size. Those are kind of your issues.
Thank you. Does anyone would like to make a motion for or against approval of this?
I would like to make a motion to deny the application.
In second,
I'll second.
motion's been made and seconded. Can we have a roll, or is there any discussion?
Discussion. I have no discussion on the issue.
No discussion? May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Reinger?
My vote is to deny, so that would be an aye.
Mr. Roberto?
Aye.
Mr. Shupp?
Aye.
Mr. Bartolt?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye. Your motion was, your request for an appeal has been denied. I wish you and your neighbors the best of luck going forward. All right. Next item on the list. Thank you. We have no unfinished business. Next item is approval of the minutes for March 27, 2019. Has everyone had an opportunity to read? Any corrections need to be made?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Bartolt?
Yes.
Mr. Roberto?
Yes.
Mr. Reinger?
Aye.
Mr. Shupp?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye. And no administrative matters, and so, I'm sorry.
We do, sorry. Ms. Dankin, who was our alternative member, she resigned.
Oh,
So we have that spot open as the moment, so.
okay. Thank you for that update. May I have, oh, the next meeting, July 24th, 2019, I understand we have 2 cases for that day. And would someone like to make a motion for adjournment?
I would like to make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Can I have a roll call?
Yes.
Mr. Shupp?
Aye.
Mr. Roberto?
Aye.
Mr. Reinger?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye. Thanks, everyone.